Hello and welcome to another Friday happy hour live stream. I'm joined today by my friend Kaiser Von Lohengramm. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Excellent pronunciation of my fake anime name. One of my favorite things that I encounter on Twitter, running the name that I do, is I talk mainly about American history and other topics around what are the American people. And whenever get something that blows up, inevitably someone is saying like, "Oh yeah, real American name Von Lohengramm," and it's like, you realize that this is not my Christian name, right? Like this is just a persona that I have, but I appreciate
so
it.
Is it like an anime character or is it just a
Yes.
made up name? Okay,
No.
I assumed that it was.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Kaiser Reinhard von Lohengramm is one of the protagonists of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which is by far one of my favorite shows that's ever been made. And one of the other things that I'm very big on posting is telling people to watch this particular show because it gives a better understanding of political realities, the rise and fall of governments, what it's like to why standing on principles kind of doesn't work that well if you just have principles alone. It's an excellent
That's
show
right.
at just getting across so much, and it's also just really well done. The author of it, the original story, is one of the better authors that Japan has. So I push it quite often just because I think you get more
Yeah.
out of stories often than you do out of just like a poli-sci textbook. So if you have a
Oh,
good story,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I was, this past week, those of us who are very online, observed the American Japanese cultural exchange that took place. And it was cool. It was fun. Like they like really like us. That is, you just assume like the whole world like hates America, right? And just thinks we're terrible. Partly because that's like what our overlords kind of want us to think is that, especially like real America, middle America, that the whole world despises you, thinks you're just these slobs and terrible people. And then you discover not only do they love America, but not the America that is um like the obvious cultural exports that we have, from Hollywood or from media more generally and so forth, but like they like real America, middle America, like they like the South. Like they like all the stuff about America that the people in the on the coast, the coastal elites hate and want to train us to hate. They actually love it. It was incredible, like to see these like Japanese guys posting videos of their trips to America, watching like a tractor pull or a demo derby, and it's like, wow, these Americans, they just drive cars into each other. This is the coolest thing in the world. Like that was great. So yeah, Sunday, we normally have a family movie night on Sunday, and I was like, all right, well maybe we'll watch some Japanese stuff then, I guess, because they like us so much. And so I thought about, yeah, watching the one that you recommended, and I couldn't find a good one because like it's, you said it's on YouTube, right? So I guess I didn't even think it would be on YouTube. So I was like digging through the bowels of the internet to find it. It's Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And But so we ended up watching like Studio Ghibli. I always mispronounce
Ghibli,
it.
Studio Ghibli.
Ghibli.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I can't. Yeah, I can't speak Japanese. And We watched Castle in the Sky. That was it's great. It's
Oh, it's an excellent
incredible
choice. I
film.
love
Yeah, yeah,
Ghibli films, and one of the things, like especially like with Japanese media, like some of the exports that come here, and sort of the vision of it is just like very degenerate, and that's how a lot of people think that Japanese media is. But I mean,
yeah.
it is just a subset of it, in the same way that like not all that comes out of America is like some of the things that you'll see on like HBO or other things like that. what's the one that had Zendaya and that like tranny in it? I'm blanking on the name of that Euphoria. Like
Yeah,
Euphoria,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like thinking that like Euphoria represents the entirety of American media, to think that like that's all that comes out of Japan. So
Well, not
there's a
just like our media, but like just our entire culture in general. Like if you
yeah.
based it on like a show like that, yeah, you would probably get the wrong impressions of what American people are actually like.
And I
But
thought it was really cool though that when they kept saying Americans and they're like, this is like American, and it was always like I like an American greeting, I hate gun control, or it's like this is what like and it was like Americans, like it was rodeos, it was burgers, it was
yeah,
just like again, like they love one of my favorite things that they love or somehow picked up on is there's like hundreds of posts now of Japanese people trying out peanuts and Coke
yeah,
and
yeah. Yeah, I
and
think that
just
was
and
Perry Abasti that like imported that to them, like made them aware of peanuts and Coca-Cola.
yeah, it's really weird. There's like tons of them going around, and it's like they're all just like this is an American beverage and something that they like to try. And like it was really cool to see, because one of the things that I kind of push a bit is like there's a sort of a southernization, you could say,
Hmm.
of particularly like the white American population. You could also say Midwestern ization, but like that core is really what I think is like getting through to a lot of people, and especially like from my time in the military, like you see this kind of southernization happen where you got guys from like California showing up, and then next thing you know, a couple weeks in, they've got like belt buckles, Ariat boots, they're wearing flannels, and like that's how they're dressing and acting now.
Yeah.
You know, country music, you know, they like chewing tobacco, like all of these like aspects of Southern culture tend to go through
Hmm.
it. And I think the same with the Midwest. It's an interesting phenomenon that's occurring, and it's cool seeing that the Japanese now see that as what it is to be an American, even with the lack of like Hollywood cultural power of that magnitude in order to spread it, but it's somehow through like osmosis has been what they see an American as. Really
Yeah.
shows like this is what like everyone knows what an American is.
Yeah, that's a point that CJ and I read through an article written from in 1921, an article written by the Vice President of the United States for the magazine Good Housekeeping, um, which at the time was like massive, right? Um, and it was like, "Whose country is America?" Was the title of it. And we're going through it, and it was incredible, an incredible artifact of our past. The things that he said, I mean, it was the kind of thing I remarked several times that like if a regular layman espoused the ideas that the eventual president of the United States did 100 years ago today, he would be immediately excommunicated from his church. Like it was that based. And so anyway, but like reading it, it was like everybody knows what an American is. And you don't have to go any further than like asking a Japanese person, right? Like if you just hold up like a picture, your photograph, for instance, not the anime avatar, but like your picture. I won't describe you. I won't dox you. Or anybody we know, right? Me or CJ or whoever, and then like you hold up that picture, and then like Vivek Ramaswamy or Sri Thavanadar, like, and you ask them, right, which one of these people is American? And like 100% of Japanese people would not pick, uh, you know, Ramaswamy
I don't know.
over
Haven't you seen Ramaswamy
Marlboro.
with his Texas suit and his cowboy hat? I
That's
mean, does
that's right. Yeah,
doesn't he
almost.
scream
Yeah,
American?
you
But
might
thank you.
you might get him with that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for confirming to everyone that I am in fact an American. I also do get accusations of everything under the sun for whether I'm
Yeah.
you know it's funny too. Like one of my favorite things about starting to blow up is when you get accused simultaneously of being like an Israeli spy and also working for Pakistan at the same time. Like when you get both of those, you must be hitting some kind of interesting chord with people. So
Well,
I'm
yeah,
glad
man,
that I can
like
occupy that space.
when you're a face poster, the same thing happens, except they'll be like, you say something nice about Trump, and it's like, enjoyed the $7,000, man. Or if you say something critical of Trump, it's like, oh, you're taking money from Qatar, huh? Like you'll get accused of both things, and sometimes from like the same statement, you know. And that's the thing that happens constantly. So yeah, when you're anonymous, they'll just assume that you're posting from Nigeria or something.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to, I titled the episode the way I did, because like the discourse right now is just like really awful. Like there isn't really any, and it's different than it has been in the past. Like I'm not one of those people that is like, oh, Twitter is the hell site. Oh, I hate it. It's so toxic and terrible. It's like, no, I've never like said that. You usually get out of it what you put into anything. And if you are feeling really bad being on there, it's probably a you problem, right? But like lately, so I've been on there like more than a decade, and I've never felt like, I hate it on here. I hate posting. I hate like scrolling through the timeline until like the last couple weeks. And not because um not because it's like, oh, like you have to pick a side. You have to be for the Iran war or against it, and you have to hate Trump, or you have to love him and believe he never makes any mistakes ever and is always right. But like that is what people are doing, right? It's You can't be like, oh yeah, I am really glad that he won the presidency, and I'm also not happy about the war. Like you can't, you're not allowed to espouse either of those things, because people will be dragging you to the extreme in either opinion, and they're just it's there's so little information about like what is actually going on, to know like, all right, is it actually going well or is it going poorly? I don't know. Nobody really knows. Um,
Yeah,
but
you brought up something with that I think is pretty interesting, and I saw this when the Russia-Ukraine kicked off initially, which is that like
yeah,
even though we
yeah,
have all of this access to all of this information, you can get on the ground videos, you can get all these things. It seems like more than ever we have absolutely no idea what is actually happening, and what is occurring.
yeah. It's even
It's
worse than Ukraine. Yeah,
yeah.
like
Well, because now you have AI videos that are now just like
yeah,
I've seen the same aircraft carrier get blown up 12 times now.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And even today, like the F-15, goes down, and I kept seeing report like the Iranians captured the pilot, and it's like, well, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
So there's so much, and it isn't even. I mean, I'm sure it's you know, state level actor misinformation going on for sure, but it's also just people that are so ego invested in being right about their boutique ideology, be being right, that like they'll just lie about stuff, right? They'll just make stuff up, and so like you don't even need governments to muddy the water. That people's brains are fried by updutes and money from engagement, that you're just not going to get the truth on anything. And so it's not been it's like the confluence of those things, of like AI, of paid engagement and engagement farming, and then also I think something has happened in certainly like the last year or two, where people's brains are just fried by the deluge of information, that they're almost in an epistemic crisis, where they really just don't know what to believe is true at all, with anything. I mean, I think it stems from 2020, honestly. Um, and so as a result of that, like they're either believing anything, or they will only believe the very particular things that they want to believe. And you can't have like discourse over important topics in an environment like that. And so like I don't even really like talking about it, honestly, because like I don't know what's going to happen. Like I've been told, 1,000 times now that like, any minute now the Marines are going to go in and storm Karg Island, and the war is going to escalate and things like that. And
And
the
we've
entire
also
time
been told that the war's over 15 times
yeah,
now. Like it's
yeah, exactly. And so I don't know what to believe about any of it. I mean, yeah, the president like goes on TV and tells everyone, yeah, it's pretty much over now. And I would like to hope that uh that is something we can believe, that like he's not going to, have egg on his face by escalating it in 2 weeks.
yeah. And
But like
and
he's
I
done
guess
that stuff before,
yeah, I mean, and the best way to handle it, in my view, is like whatever is like, you have no actual ability to change whatever is going to happen right now for the most
Yeah,
part. Any
yeah,
amount of
exactly.
screaming, any amount of discourse is not going to do anything. The only people that are actually going to have any impact on whether this goes are in office right now. Things will happen, and this is why also like being a Christian helps, because you can also just like, if these things are giving you a lot of anxiety and trouble and they are things that you have no ability to impact or do anything about
Yeah,
whatsoever, you can kind of just pray about it and hope that, ask for God to intervene, to have guidance, to bring us to somewhere, and then move
yeah,
on. And then you can talk about things like, for example, Anglo-Saxon history, if you want to
yeah,
get into
yeah.
that. um
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to talk about, because it's like I want to talk about productive things, and people might be like, well, how is that productive to talk about, history from, 1600 years ago? It is actually, because I'm I mean, I shouldn't say I'm shocked by it. I shouldn't be shocked by it, but most people in America have no conception of any of that. It's a complete blank spot. I mean, most like European history is a complete blank spot for most American people. It's stuff we like. I went to public school, and it is not anything we were ever taught at all. I was never taught. I went to college for history, and so I had, you know 16 yes 17 years of history education, and never once did the names Hengist and Horsa ever come up. And I took like two semesters of British history, and like it's never even brought up. It's like, yeah, and there were, the Romans were there, and then all of a sudden these Saxons, and then let's just move on to William the Conqueror. Like there's just nothing there at all. And so for me, it's things like that that become a fascination. And for me, that topic, really struck me. I was 19 years old, and I went to the British Museum, uh, and I saw, I'm walking through there, and this uneducated rube, I don't know, I don't even know what I was looking at half the time, right? And I walk in, and I see this beautiful helmet, this mask, and it's silver and gold. It's a reproduction of one. Like they had the little pieces of it that they found, but they rebuilt the whole thing, right?
was it the Sutton
And it,
who?
and it was the Sutton Hoo helmet. Yeah. And then they had the ship there, and everything. And I was like, whoa, what is that? Where did that come from? And then I just started like voraciously reading everything I could about it, because it was this blank spot in my knowledge. And like my family, my parents, we went to Bath in England, and went to, saw some of the Roman sites there, and I was just fascinated by Roman Britain as well. And and so yeah, like just the fact that these people came across the sea, came to that land and settled it and made it their own, was fascinating to me. And it was like, wow, this kind of, this is pretty, similar to American history, actually, when you think about it. Where these people, came, I mean, it's a much shorter trip, obviously, but they just come and they settle it and they fight with the natives and they take it and then they build their own distinct civilization after the collapse of Rome. And it's like, this is cool. This is interesting. And yeah, I think like in the popular mind, maybe like the only thing they know about it is from, I think it's a terrible movie. Maybe you like it, but that like King Arthur movie from like the early 2000s is like the only the only like mention of the Saxon invasion in popular culture.
Well, you have The Last
They're the bad
Kingdom
guys.
as
Yeah,
well.
well, that's much later Saxon, England. But I even like yeah, that's true. Like the Last Kingdom, obviously, yeah, that's centers on Alfred and his son and his grandson. But I think like just even like the early Saxons,
Oh yeah, nothing gets made about the early Saxons. The
there's
closest is,
nothing about that.
yeah, Beowulf, I guess, is the closest that you get to it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just tell you my own journey with why I care so much about
Yeah.
Saxons and this, because so going way back, so I grew up in a very liberal part of the country with very liberal teachers, very progressive ones who and what particularly, this starts with my fascination with the founding fathers and why I speak so much about them and why I make so much on them, is because I was told very early on, the very basic like liberal line of the Second Amendment, which is that the Second Amendment is just for, it's basically giving the government the right to own guns, that the militia is part of the government, therefore that's who gets to own firearms. I said, no, that's probably not true. Let me go look at what these guys actually wrote about it. That's probably the best place to start. Like, let's see what they had. And so that started very early on in my life. And then I have just continually studied more and more of this as things went on. I got it. I also went to school for history in college. And then further on, like I come across these mentions when I'm looking at some of Thomas Jefferson's writings. And one of the most interesting things that he says is he says early on when they are forming the United States as an independent country and they're determining what should be on the U.S. seal, Thomas Jefferson proposed that on the back of the U.S. seal should be Hengist and Horsa, because these are the two Saxon chiefs from whom our laws descend from. And so that really sparked something with me not too long ago where I was just wanted to explore this idea. Where's this coming from? Why are these guys talking about this? And I study a little bit of Whig history as well as like just tracing back this thread. And they're around the 16th century, 17th century in England, particularly when they were going through the Reformation. They're trying to trace back the roots of the church, and they're trying to see, okay, so we're starting our own. What's our legitimacy? Where do we have it? One of the things that the English Reformation decides is and looks at after looking at this history is that when the Norman invasion occurred, they brought their own form of Catholicism in that replaced our native English church in our native culture. That also then translates into the political sphere, where they also say that prior to 1066, we had this particular political system where we had more rights, where the king was not just simply a God-ordained king purely, but he also was accountable to his Witan, to these different holdings that we had of kind of constitutionalism that goes all the way back to that era. And so I wanted to explore that a little bit and see, okay, let me just do the reading of these firsthand sources myself. Let me look into what were these people actually doing? What was their government like? And while sometimes you could find them overextend their claims, there is a lot of truth to the Anglo-Saxon government. When you start to look at like how it was formed and what it was like, it explains the American government quite well. You understand, there's this idea that gets permeated, and I guess we'll talk about Vivek again, but there's this idea that he brings up that a lot of like normie conservative Republicans believe, which is that 1776 and the Declaration of Independence was just this totally unique ideological document. Nobody had ever came up with any of these ideas before. This is totally revolutionary to believe any of it.
From the heavens into the brain of Thomas Jefferson.
No civilization existed before then. But it's an utter absurdity, because if you really look at like what the Declaration of Independence is, all the beginning part of it is just like a bit of flowery language to make some very general declarations. The real meat of it gets almost entirely ignored, which is here's all the justifications for why we are going to break sovereignty. And they bring up all of this very long list of, here is all the things that have happened that the king has not rectified. This is why we're going to now be independent. So that is what the actual Declaration of Independence is getting at, much more than any kind of ideological document. It's just that. And even like all men are created equal is more or less just a reference to the Virginia Charter that had initially kicked off everything, where in the charter it said that everyone who is going to be born on American soil is going to be treated exactly the same as if they had been born in England. That's more or less what they were getting at. But you read Jefferson, and what's far better than Common Sense, who I also don't like Thomas Paine very much. That's a whole aside. But Jefferson writes this incredible document, the Summary View of the Rights of British America. And he also lines out this argument of, we are doing what our Anglo-Saxon ancestors did. He lines out exactly what you said, where we freely came to this new land. We conquered it ourselves. And he says it was our blood, our money, our wealth that was put into colonizing these lands. It was done by individuals, not by the British government. And it is ours and our right alone to determine, therefore, what occurs with it. And we had an agreement with the king, but he makes a pretty solid legal argument as to like why the king has essentially vacated this by not intervening with Parliament. We can get into all of that, but I guess going back to the Saxons, you see when you look at their laws, like for example, the laws of Vine, or if you look at some of the laws that Alfred the Great had forward, they justify the rule of their king not just by an ordinance by God, which is there, but they say that the Witan has come together, the wise men. That is essentially the translation of what Witan is. It's all it's bishops, it's their eldermen, so the higher nobles get together and they elect their king. Now, the king could only come from specific bloodlines. It was only a few eligible people, but they would make that determination. Alfred's the best example of where it doesn't go by the normal patrilineal lineage, where Alfred's just the brother of the previous king. But because the king had such a terrible son who was not fit for rule, they decided that they're going to instead elect Alfred over as the king of Wessex. So you see that's
shown well in the show that you brought up, The Last Kingdom. Like there's some, several quibbles to have, especially like the Netflix seasons.
But just a random African guy just shows up in 8th century England.
It's like, okay, yeah, I can see that Netflix took this over. But yeah, like what was his name? Ethel, was it not Ethelred? Ethelwald. Yeah,
yes, was Ethelwald. That's the son that sucks.
Yeah, and it's like there's that brilliance there where it's like, because that is always one of the major criticisms of monarchy is, what do you do when the king's son is just totally worthless, right? What do you do at that point? And like the Anglo-Saxons had an answer to that. It's like, well, you have the Witan select the king. That there's a that it isn't just like the accident of birth, right? But rather, it's almost, dare I say, like Moldbuggian, where you have the board select the CEO, right? Like that's what's going on. Like there's only certain candidates that you could have for CEO, but the board selects him, and And that's how we're ruled. But he is given like total executive power, right? That it's just him, right? Like there's a brilliance there, and it worked. It worked extremely well, and it's like this is the roots of the system that we have. And I mean, for me, I think this stuff is always like extremely fascinating, because I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, maybe this is just my personality type and the way that I am, but I don't think so. That like I look at like pop evangelicalism today, and what is just within the zeitgeist, within mainstream American Christianity, is like nobody knows anything about the Old Testament at all. Like very, very, very little. Like they know a couple stories. They know like David and Goliath and Jonah and the whale, or it's a fish, not a whale. But they know a few stories from like Sunday school, and that's it. But they don't know like the warp and the woof of it. They don't know the reasons why. They don't know the progression of from one covenant to another, and what God was doing, and they don't see how it relates to the New Testament. And it's like you read the New Testament, and like 10% of the New Testament, it's either direct quotations of the Old Testament or at least allusions to it. And so if you like don't know this, if you don't know where this came from, you just think like, boom, the New Testament came out of nowhere, and this is the only thing we have, and you'll never fully understand it. And so the same is true of American history, and in particular, like American politics, American governance, American laws, American culture, where it came from, what it is. It's like it didn't, yeah, like you said, it didn't just spontaneously emerge, sui generis in 1776. It had thousands of years of historical development, and nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. And I think that's purposeful, actually. I think it is on purpose, because it strips us of our identity. It strips us of our uniqueness. It strips us of who we are and where we came from and why we are the way that we are. If you have no idea what that is, then Joel Berry propositional nationhood like makes sense. Like, well, yeah, all 8 billion people on planet Earth could be an American if they just really like the Declaration of Independence or free speech or whatever, but it's like, no, it actually came from a particular people and their experience. So anyway, I'm ranting now.
No,
I totally cut you
you're
off.
hitting exactly what needs to be hit, which is that if you could point to any like major problem with why things are the way they are, it's the absolute disconnection we have between,
Yeah.
and it hits our religion, it hits our culture, it hits our politics. Everything is just this disconnection where you do not understand anything that's going on. And it's something that, like, even when I was a child, like, it was bizarre to me that people could go about and just like live their day-to-day lives doing these things and have no idea why
Yeah.
anything is the way it is, have no
Yeah.
connection to their past. And even with the Saxons, like, they had a recognition of that. Like, to bring it back a bit, if you read the Saxon Chronicle, or the
Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, there's a
Yeah.
book that's named that, but the historical document that Alfred the Great put forward was very specifically because he wanted to reconnect everything. Like, okay, we're going to trace back our entire history from now, because we were just on the verge of being destroyed by the Danes. So we need to make a preservation of this, so that way our people have something to reference, so that way they know all where we came from, all that happened. Very interestingly, the Saxon Chronicle also dates itself from, the birth of Christ, and that's where it like really kicks history off at. And so it starts it there, gives a bit of a brief overview of Roman history. Then it drops in what some of my favorite people, Hengist and Horsa, where they show up in 449 AD, leading a bunch of Jutes, Angles, and Saxons over into England, and they lead them because the Roman Britons hired them as mercenaries to deal with the Picts. So there's a
we are.
lot that you can understand from that too, where it's like there's this group of people who were once like known for being like very savage, very brutal warriors that kind of got pacified, got very civilized, and then they brought in because they were facing this foreign horde that was coming, or not foreign
Mhm.
horde, but they were facing the Picts who had
Yeah,
staved off Roman rule and maintained
yeah,
this kind of barbarianism. That now that the Romans had left, now the Picts start coming in, and
yeah.
they are absolutely demolishing the Romano Britons to the point where they bring in these German mercenaries, and then the German mercenaries decide, oh, well, it's sort of that meme where it's like, oh, we're saved, less saved, and more like under new management is
That's right.
more or less how it went with them. There is
Yeah,
also, oh yeah, there's also something to be said too with it where most of like if you look at the ethnic makeup of the English now, it
yeah.
is still they still have a heavy base of Celtic blood to them. And
Mhm.
for the most part, it was just these Saxons and Germans that came over, conquered them, and then kind of integrated them in. And then you have an ethnogenesis where you
Yeah.
have the English people start to form. And this is also where it's like very worthwhile to study here. This in
Yeah.
particular, because it's the best way to show that like the American people are our own unique people, and how we came about
That's
is
right.
when you study this one in particular. And
Mhm.
I'm sure you've kind of explored this too, and you brought up some of this, but when you look at how it happened, essentially you had these Germans come over from this coastline. They cross an ocean, they separate themselves out. The moment that you have that opportunity presented to you, where it is you can either go across this ocean, take this opportunity, go on this place. In this case, it was go be a part of a mercenary band, go fight this place, go to this new land. The people who say yes to that and the people who say no to that, right there creates two distinct populations, even though they don't
Yeah,
realize it. The very
yeah.
decision to make so is going to get you a different character and a different type of person than saying no does. Now, when you're in this land and you're in
Mhm.
this new place, you start to form new governments, you start to form new ways of operating, of doing things, you integrate in, you respond to this new geography, you carve out your new kingdoms. And now there's an element to ethnogenesis too that this shows that isn't actually genetic itself that forms a group. And that
Yeah.
is when you have the Danes show up. One of the interesting things is that if you look at where Anglia and Jutland are, that is where the Danes came from.
Yeah.
You know, that is Denmark right there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they also came from Norway and these other places. But because of this separation that had already occurred of 400 years of being apart, even though they would be very similar to the Saxons, you had a very different group of people because
Mhm.
they were still pagans. The Saxons
Yes.
had long since Christianized. And the brutality that they enacted, the way that they fought, the way that things went, that other group coming in is what Alfred was able to use in order to coalesce as the English people. They went from these like
Yeah.
7 petty kingdoms into we're going to form one kingdom of our own people because we see that here's this outside group. And I think America is seeing, we've seen this in different waves
Yeah.
through the different immigration process and other things that have occurred. But even now, I think like the reason why what is an American is being presented as such a big question is why so many people are talking about this, why we're trying to reconnect, why there's this spark with it, is because we now every day are encountering people who are very obviously very, very different from us. You know, like a
Yeah.
Hindu pagan temple, and the people that are attending this are not me. In
No.
no world could I say that this person is the same as me. Whether
Yeah,
they have
we don't share anything,
no,
with them other than like the
there's a
very basics of common humanity, right?
yeah,
Like that's it, you
yeah,
know?
that's the most you share, and then you share maybe a piece of paper that says you are
Yeah.
both citizens, which is proving more and more to be an utter absurdity. That this is to pretend
Yeah.
like we're somehow the same. And
Yeah.
out of that, I think is why, like, when you start to study your history on these and you start to see these parallels, it really does show, okay, so these things have actually happened before. We aren't in a totally unique situation. And there's a lot that we can
Mhm.
pull from this in order to understand, like, how do we react and how do we operate under this new paradigm that is new to us, has happened before. You can draw a lot out of it, especially with the Saxons, because that is who we descend from.
That's right. Like my own ancestry is interesting. Like, it's funny you bring up the ones that stayed behind. Like, I'm descended from the ones that stayed behind. Uh, I'm, I'm not I'm not English. I am for me, if you look at the map on here, I'm from the yellow part of the map and the red part of the map, right? That's my paternal and maternal ancestry. And but at the same time, it's like, well, why did those people leave, Germany in the 19th century to come to America? Um, for very similar reasons, right? And how were they able to assimilate so easily to this place called America? And I think it's because they share the same culture, right? They shared the same values that and way of life that is transmitted over dozens of generations. That's just common to them, right? That's why it worked, right? If we had been from like any other part of the world, it wouldn't have been as easy. And so it's just interesting to me. Also, I mean, another fascination of mine is, right, you have, you know, 3 centuries later, after the Anglo-Saxons are Christianized pretty thoroughly, you have Saint Boniface, who is a Saxon, leaves Britain to go back to the Saxons in Germany to Christianize them, right? And he was martyred by the Frisians, by the people in the yellow part of the map here, and ministered to them as well. And I like to think, and maybe it's not a good thing to think, but that like my great 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 grandfather is part of the band of Frisian brigands that martyred him, and we eventually became Christians because of him. And so anyway, it's like, but that was a purposeful project that was undergone by him because he had an affinity for those people because they were his people, right? He loved them and he wanted to share Christ with them. And 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 so he did. Like it wasn't like he went to some completely foreign people. It was like, no, these are my people and they are trapped in darkness, and I want to bring the light of the gospel to them. And he did, and he was successful. And so it's interesting that during that period, um, the Christian faith overtook much of that area, but didn't get into Daneland, and those are the people that then uh invaded Britain after that, and were and very nearly were successful, right? In the 10th century. But this people that had formed, right? You mentioned the ethnogenesis that had taken place in the from really from the 5th to the 10th century on the island of Britain. They consolidated into a distinct particular people, and were able to stave that off and retain retain uh not only their own self-government, but their own identity as a people, their own distinctiveness, their own land they were able to maintain. And so like you're absolutely right in terms of like the parallels. And so I am always like, yeah, what we need, like people are always like, we need a Christian this or a Protestant this or whatever. And it's like, well, we just need King Alfred, right? That's what we need. Right? We
Yeah,
need the
well,
King Alfred.
yeah, you could that's something that Stephen Wolfe brings up quite a bit, which is that the answers are largely internal. You don't actually have to look too much
Yeah.
outside of you can just trace back your history and find these parallels. You don't have to look
That's
outside
right.
of it. And in particular, if you're looking outside of like, a leader, because I think it's not necessarily worthwhile to sit around and wait for a great man to just show up and fix everything. I think the best
Mhm.
thing that you could do is to do as much as you can to get whatever power you have, whatever area of influence you have, try to make that as good as possible and try to build the right environment to where if, ultimately God, if will either give him to us or he's not going to come.
Yeah.
It just comes down to that. But you can actually make things better in that regard. And if you're looking again back to the Saxons, one of the things that I find so fascinating about them is that they're very different in terms of what their government was compared to most of medieval Europe. They were not this kind of super strict hierarchical society like you might see in parts of Germany or parts of
Yeah.
France. Their structure had a degree of social mobility to it. Like we,
Yeah.
we touched a bit on how the Witan would elect people. But for example, like if you read the laws of Ine, which is one of the oldest law codes that we have, they have in their book, a nobleman is, he is obliged to serve militarily when called upon. And should he decline his duties, we're going to strip him of his lands and strip him of his
Yeah.
noble status. So you're
Yeah.
going to do this. Like this is something that you have to do, that you're this status that you have, though it is transferable to your descendants, can be lost the moment you do not
Yeah.
uphold the duties that it comes with. The same
Yeah.
applied to their freemen, because they didn't really, their peasantry, you could call them, they were called churls, but it's better to understand them as yeomen. For the most part,
Mhm.
most people in Saxon society were free. They were not actually
Yeah.
bonded to lords in particular. They had duties to
Yeah.
them, and they had the duty was that same thing where if you were called upon for the fjord, which is to say the militia, um, you would have to come up, you would have to be able to train. It was about a period of 2 months initially, to where when you were called upon, and what you could be called up for was either for combat, to build bridges and fortifications, or to perform other kinds of guard duties and things like that. And so that was you had a higher degree of liberty than the vast majority of people in Europe at that time. But
Oh,
with
yeah.
it came
Oh, yeah.
duties and obligations and responsibilities. And right now, if you look at America, you have all of these ideas of rights and all of these ideas of liberties, and you have all of these things that you think that you're owed, but there's
And no
very
duties.
little that you
No.
expect to, what do you give in response to that? What is your
That's right.
duty for it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is, you go back to, the founding era of America and the founding fathers, and these are the things that, I mean, you read things that like John Adams or Thomas Jefferson wrote, and what they would talk about was responsible liberty, right? Which doesn't mean like a liberty that is highly limited or whatever. Like some people maybe hear that phrase and think like, oh, that means like you get a little bit of liberty but not really. And no, it's like, no, it's a responsible citizenry, a citizen that is fully cognizant of the duties that they owe to one another, that that allows for a widespread liberty, that doesn't exist anywhere else, right? The two things are in tandem, right? You can't have one without the other, right? You can't have just like total freedom of speech, total freedom of expression and freedom of thought, freedom of association, right? You can't have those things and then no obligations whatsoever. And the 20th century is one where we just got rid of all the obligations, right? And not only in a formal sense, but much more in the informal sense, that that you like actually owe something to your community, right? You owe something to your neighbors. You owe something to everyone around you. By the middle, to the late 20th century, it's like I don't owe anybody anything, right? I'm picking myself up by my own bootstraps, and I'm doing whatever I want because this is America. And it's like people didn't think about it that way. Certainly not at the beginning um, of what came to be known as the United States, but um, all throughout our history, it's like no, you have responsibilities to other people. If you want to be able to exercise liberty, you have duties to your neighbors that you have to carry out. I mean, it's still there in some ways, right? Most American people know that they need to mow their lawn or pay someone to mow their lawn and keep their yard, looking nice. That's like this unstated obligation that everybody knows that they have. It's like, oh, I need to mow my lawn. It's getting a little long. I need to, and it's like, well, why do you do that, right? It's because you don't want your neighbors looking at an eyesore, right? Because you care about them and you care about your status, among them. Um, and it's the same thing with like the shopping cart test, right? It's like, well, no one's holding a gun to your head saying you better put that shopping cart back or I'm going to blow your brains out. It's, well, this is just a duty I owe to my neighbors. And so it's still there somewhere deep inside of us. It's in the blood, man. But it's been attenuated. It's been pushed down. It's been destroyed. And I think it's not a huge shock to anyone, but I think things are going to be a lot more difficult over the next 50 years than they have been for the last 100. And those duties and obligations to your neighbors are going to, they're going to come back. They're going to come back in a significant way. And the question will be, do we have the, organizational capacity? Do we have the social capital to be able to resurrect those things? Right. And I think we do. I think we can actually. I'm not so black-pilled as many other people to think that it's impossible. Partly because it's like deep down inside of us somewhere, it's there, right? It's there. We understand this. And so the Fjord is coming back, man. The Fjord. It's going to make its way back into our civilization.
Yeah, and there's something that you touched on there that I wanted to explore a little bit more, especially with the Constitution and how it was made for this specific people.
Yeah.
There's a quote by John Adams that gets thrown out quite a bit, but few
All
people
the
know
time.
it. Yeah, the Constitution is only made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly unsuited to anything but. Oh, are you? Am I still good to keep going?
I'm back. Don't worry.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just talk to the audience with this, but so when you're looking at the Constitution is only made for a moral and religious people, it is wholly unsuited to anything but. The reason why he's saying that is because unlike the Saxons who had it codified that you would have these obligations, that there was negative consequences to following through them, they had decided that because their people were as solid as they were, and because they wanted that to be inculcated without government enforcing it, that you would have that duty to your fellow man, duty to your countrymen, duty already there without it being enforced legally.
Yeah.
That it would that we wouldn't have to actually make it so that you have to serve in the militia, that you would simply do it because you understood that you were obliged to do so, that you had to, that it was necessary, that you were capable of governing yourself. And so when you look at these things, like it's very clear that they had a solid understanding, and a lot of people will say like, oh well, clearly everything they screwed up tremendously because of the situation we're in now. Well, nothing is perfect that's ever set forward. Everything is going to always have some issues, atrophies that come into place. If there's anything that they actually screwed up on, and you cannot blame this for this, it was how degenerated their descendants would be. Because if you read, especially like one of my favorite letters that you can find is a letter from John Quincy Adams to Sam Adams. And John Quincy Adams writes this when he's 10. And he's telling his father about how he prefers to write letters he prefers to receive letters rather than write them, because he has trouble keeping his thoughts in order, that he has neglected his studies, that he was going through this history of the entirety of the English people, starting with Hengist and Horsa, going to the modern day. And he was only 3 volumes into this 7-volume set, and he had meant to be 3.5 volumes in. And so he was asking his father for advice on how best to proportion his playtime and his studies, and how he might be able to better get through this. And this is a 10-year-old talking about this. And when you're looking in particular at Whig history, which I think is extremely poorly understood what this means, because a lot of people will throw out Whig history and say, oh, they just meant that like we're going to get libtarded after forever, you know, like everything, like when the Whigs were around, they were actually hoping for like gay pride flags and your weed farm. That's what Whig history meant by progress. And it's no. What they actually meant was that they hoped, like they had seen so much increase in like literacy and people's ability to govern themselves and
living standards, everything.
And technology and you know, exactly. And medical, like all of these things had been getting better. And so it really just was, they were in this time of optimism where it just seemed like, wow, we're really getting to places where things are great and things are going to continue to progress forward in those regards. And it's anachronistically read back that this is how it was always meant to be, which is something that runs through both the liberal and conservative paradigm of like what their narrative of America is. Started around the 60s when you had Buckley end up killing a lot of the old right, like metaphorically, and whatever the progressives had was you had this kind of coalescence around this narrative of America where what we set out initially was to get this civil rights era America of this new place where everyone can be here, this propositional nationhood. And that's what was always intended. And we progressed to that point. The only thing that differentiated the Conservative Party and the liberals in this was that the conservatives thought everything should end right here and that we're good after this. MLK is the last bit, and then we're good. And we don't really need to change anymore. And liberals were just, we're going to keep going forward. And that narrative is collapsing heavily right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that's why you have these absurdities where I've deemed this as the cult of the Constitution, and I've seen a few people start to spread that around, and so I'm happy to see it because it's the best way to phrase it, which is where they have formed this bizarre cult around the Constitution and all of these things that have come in to play with it. And now that's the only thing that matters. It is this document that is like our New Testament, and where it doesn't matter what the founders actually said or believed. It doesn't matter what was going on at the time. It's just this one document. And the Supreme Court is like an infallible magisterium that has interpreted it perfectly for us. And they might have like a few issues with like, oh, Burge fell or others, but they think the only way to rectify it is to have the Supreme Court rule on it, and to follow them. That it's just this like infallible dissented document. And it's hilarious to even see it like that because the founders themselves, when they made it, were just reacting to the Articles of Confederation. They took power that was not actually proportioned to them. And then they decided that pragmatically, we have to get something else because these articles are not functional. These are something that we made very much on the fly because it was what we needed in order to get something where we had some kind of cohesive government to fight the British Empire. Now that we're independent, it's not working out so well. Let's just make something new. And they did it because it was necessary, because they cared about the country far more than they did anything else. And they wanted to preserve the country.
Yeah, it was pragmatic politics that formed the United States Constitution. It wasn't these golden tablets that descended from heaven, and people treat it that way. And it's really difficult to articulate this because people will, when they're beholden to the cult of the Constitution, they'll hear criticism of the cult of the Constitution as though you like hate the U.S. Constitution, as though you like hate the founding fathers, as though you hate like the Second Amendment and the First Amendment and all of these things. And it's like, no, I really love the Second Amendment. I really love the First Amendment, right? The vestigial remnants of the spirit that gave us the Second Amendment and gave us the First Amendment are like the only thing that keeps us from being like Great Britain now, right? So I love it. I absolutely love it. It's that it's that the very distinct attitude that most conservatives have toward it in this it really it's hard to describe it in any other way than like
It's idolatry
uh,
is really the
yeah
only way to
an idolatry of the US Constitution, that prevents us from taking action politically the way the founding fathers took action politically, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm much more I'm way more interested in like doing George Washington stuff than I am like dusting the statue of George Washington and keeping them the museum of the memory of George Washington pristine. I would rather do the deeds of George Washington, right? I would rather do the deeds of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. And you like the more you know about these men, the more you study the things that formed them and shaped them and made them what they were, the more you're like, if they were here right now and they saw the way things are, like they would be furious, right? They would not they would not be satisfied with this. They would not be worshiping at the altar of the US Constitution the way that like in the oral arguments this week. I mean,
Oh yeah,
John
Justice
Roberts
Roberts and what he
it's
said.
disgusting, right? Like I have nothing but disdain for that man. That right here you have the Solicitor General saying, oh, right, if you interpret it this way, right, the wrong way, right, the plain reading of it, the things that they said in the congressional record, that this is only for freed slaves, right? That's what this is for, is to give them citizenship because they're subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's why they have citizenship. And you apply that in this way that everyone on the planet, if they just happen to be born on the magic soil of America, could be a citizen and vote in our elections. That's insane. That makes no sense at all. That's not what they wanted it originally in 1866 when they wrote it, and it was kind of dubiously, ratified. And it has never meant that. It has never meant that some Chinese woman could book a flight when she's 8.5 months pregnant to Los Angeles or to San Diego, and then have a baby, and now that baby gets to vote by mail in U.S. elections. Like that's insane. That to think that that's what the U.S. Constitution says, and if it does, and I don't want to be to reach this conclusion, but it's like if it does, then what good is it having a constitution if it grants citizenship to the entire planet, right? What good is it? And you say that to the average conservative, and they're like, well, it sounds like you hate our freedoms, right? It sounds like you hate America. Right. It sounds like you should just go move somewhere else, like North Korea. And it's like, no, I'm an American. I am an American, man. Like, I care about America. I care about my people. And I don't want the entire planet to have the ability to rule over my people. I don't want that. I want America to be free. And so like, I don't even know where to begin with people because
it's like The Incredibles to bring up something that's like very silly, but The Incredibles, but syndrome, when he says like, if everyone can be super, no one will be. If everyone's an American, then no one is. I mean,
no one is.
Yeah. And there's a quote I want to read from Thomas Jefferson here that I think I've been throwing around as much as humanly possible.
I am animated.
Yeah, very animated. But so I just wanted to read this quote because it's what I throw out as much as possible to try to get through to these people, because I try as much as I can to interact with like normal conservatives, even though X drops you into an echo chamber. But so a strict observance of the written laws is doubtless one of the highest virtues of a good citizen, but it is not the highest. The laws of necessity, of self-preservation, of saving our country when in danger, are of higher obligation. To lose our country by a scrupulous adherence to written law would be to lose the law itself, with life, liberty, property, and all those who are enjoying them with us, thus absurdly sacrificing the end to the means.
Yes. Yeah. Like this is Romans 8 shaman. Like this is exactly what he's saying here in this comment. Right. Our Constitution is good. Fact check. True. It is. The problem is how it's being subverted. The issue is you need to be willing to bypass the Constitution in principle. And that's exactly the quote that you read. It's like we can have this like scrupulous, Talmudic reading of the law. And you do that in order to subvert it. It's like, well, Kentucky Brown Jackson, like, well, if I stole someone's wallet in Japan, I'm subject to their laws. So that means I could be a citizen of Japan if they had the 14th Amendment. And it's like that's what they're doing. They're playing these stupid little word games, like trying to like, oh, well, if you look at it this way, it could possibly mean that. And it's like, that's not what the spirit of the law is, right? Yeah. I mean, that's why, like, constantly, I love, I've been reading the Gospel of Matthew with my family for our family devotions. And I love the Gospels. I love them. And you see the things that Jesus says about the Pharisees, right? And why they're evil. Why they were just so evil. And I always go back to his criticism of them, where you have the Pharisees and say, you say that a man who, takes his entire inheritance, right? The firstborn son gets a double inheritance. And the point of that is so that he can take care of his elderly parents, right? And the Pharisees say, right, if you donate that to the temple, the whole thing, just to spite your parents and leave them destitute and leave them without provision whatsoever and let them die in the gutter, the Pharisees will say that's righteous because you've done a good thing. You've donated to the temple. And Jesus says, like, in doing that, you are breaking the fifth commandment in the most egregious possible way. And the Pharisees say that that's good, right? That's how these people interpret our Constitution, in the same way the Pharisees would interpret the law.
Yeah, it's completely Pharisaical, even to the point where, the way that the Pharisees more or less thought that they would be saved from Roman rule was if they just got really, really good at following the law, and that they just
if I tithe my dill and my mint and my cumin, right? Yes. Like so, like I've got 10 pieces of dill here, 10 little stems of dill. I'm going to give one of them, to the temple, and that's how I stick it to the Romans, right? I am going to. Right, the Romans come by and they, their law says that, hey, you over there, you need to carry my stuff for a mile. I'm going to stick to the Romans and say, listen, man, it's the Sabbath. I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do any work on the Sabbath. So bleep you. And Jesus says, no, actually, you pick that guy's stuff up and you carry it 2 miles. Right, that's what you should do. They're subverting the law. They're using the law to actually do things that are wrong. And that's how they deal with our Constitution. That's how they deal with all of our laws. And they violate the spirit of them. Like the whole point, the entire point of the United States Constitution is to preserve the thing that we have, the liberties that we have, the government that we have, the freedom.
Well, it goes beyond that.
We have for our posterity.
Yes.
And they want to give that to the entire world.
Well, if you really want to get into it, like even the liberties and with that Jefferson quote, and why I bring it up is because he's using that to, like, he brings up that in the context of that is George Washington. He's giving the examples of where George Washington in the War for Independence violated people's life, liberty, and property rights because it was necessary to save the country and to save the people. So even those things that we like, the liberties and the other things like that, that is of a lesser value than the people themselves.
Yes. And that's the thing. Like it's fascinating to me. That point, like, I've been doing a whole lot of yard work now. Maybe you can see on camera, I'm all sunburned. But while I've been doing yard work, I've been listening to Shelby Foote's Civil War. And the like most fascinating thing to me, and it's the whole thing is so relevant to so many of the things right now. And one of the things that is the most relevant is that here the Confederacy is in this like total existential struggle, right? They know our entire society is going to be destroyed forever. But we're gonna like spurg out over our libertarian principles here, and we're not gonna do a draft, and we're not gonna tax people as much as we should, and we're not gonna suspend habeas corpus because that's what Lincoln did, and he's bad. And you're not gonna do the things that are necessary in order to preserve the thing that you have, and like that's why they lost, right? That is why they lost, and it isn't isn't that they lost to Gettysburg? It isn't that they lost, this battle or that battle, or they lost Fort Donelson to General Grant. It's that they would not stop spurging out about their principles. And they had to set these principles aside in order to preserve the principles in posterity. And so it's like, man, that's instructive to us today. And it's like, they didn't learn the lesson. Like they maintained the thing that they received from Thomas Jefferson, but they didn't learn the lesson of, like, they didn't do any of that stuff during the war, right? Like and after the war, people tried to do a tax revolt, and George Washington put it down because the country would disintegrate if he didn't, right? Like, people don't get that. They don't see that. They think like, oh, I guess they had tyranny right away during right in the colonial period, right after the founding of the country. And it's like, no, they had to do those things. They had to for the country to survive. And so people, like, it is not something to be underestimated ever. The capacity of people to miss the forest for the trees. And so that's like, man, that's where we're at on so much of this, where it's like, oh no, we can't violate religious liberty and like kick out all the Muslims and like knock down all the Hindu temples because like the First Amendment, man, because then they'll do it to churches. And it's like, guess what? As soon as they have a majority, they're going to do it to churches anyway. Right. It's just like the Republicans with the stupid filibuster. It's like, oh, we can't the holy sacred filibuster. We can't do anything about that. Because if we do it, then the Democrats will when they win. And it's like, they're going to do it anyway, man. It like, nobody, don't you see that? And so this, and of course, like with those people, like, they're just traitors to the country. It's interesting. You bring up, the Anglo-Saxons and the laws that they had for the aldermen, and like, if they don't fulfill their duties to the people, they will lose all of their property. They'll lose their office. And it's like, man, I wish we had that right now, right? Like Lindsey Graham, right? He'd be run out of town on a rail. Like actually, like the entire Congress, the entire Senate, they'd be gone. They're done. John Roberts, you're out of here. You can go live in Haiti now. We don't want you. You have abandoned your duties to the people. Get out of here. And that would be that we should just like adopt an Anglo-Saxon mindset is what I think.
I completely agree in that regard. And there's one thing in particular that they had that ties in as well to my namesake from Legend of the Galactic Heroes is one of the things that they bring up because you have essentially like the whole show is just this division between on one side of the galaxy is a autocratic empire with a monarchy and nobles, and then on the other side is a democratic system. And the issue, one of the things that they bring up, that this is what made it resonate with me so much, just as someone who did serve in the military, was they have there's a major issue where the people that are going to war and that are going and doing these things and leading in the democratic system are divorced from the realities of that war and from the realities of what it's like to actually leave, and they're more focused on this internal system than they are on the outside struggle. Like they and so you see this kind of play out, and one of the reasons why I like this character that I resonate with, I like him so much because he was on the front lines literally the entire time, leading from the front, even as he like ascends and rises to power. Even when he takes, and becomes the emperor, he still is leading. Like he there's a great bit where he says, "My throne will not be in the palace. My throne is on my flagship. That is where I will be leading this government from, and I will continue and move through." It's amazing, but that's
well,
also what
the
the
point that
Saxons
you
have.
make. Oh, yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. I think the point that you make, with that, and even the point about the feared, like the fact that these men could be called upon, to, to fight, to go into combat or to build, to build fortifications or whatever, and that was their duty. And in response to their duty, they're allotted liberties that no one in the rest of the European continent contemporaneously would enjoy. That like there is this this idea, and I think it's true, like that the only freedom that exists in at least in a political sense is comes from arms, comes from combat. And this is, I mean, this, like, why do we have a Second Amendment? It's that, right? And you'll have like the libs who will be like, yo, it's for the militias, on the frontier and everything else. And it's like, yeah, actually the woke are more correct than the mainstream, like that's why. But the reason that they were free is because they did militia service, right? Because they had to fight against, whatever native tribes were going to come scalp them and defend one another. Like that's why they were free, because they had muskets and could fight. Um, it's those two things, that that uh that freedom, like political freedom, comes from a citizenry that is able to do combat, right? That could be called upon to do combat. And that's something that is like completely and totally lost. That this idea, at least in our modern political context, right? Like and like their political leadership, the structure of it was like basically a military hierarchy, right? Like, who are the aldermen that are in the Witten? Who is the king, right? It's the guy who's going to be commanding, the armies, right, and calling the feards that each of the aldermen possess. Um, right, that's what gave them freedom, was their ability to project force as a people. And it's like that's what we like need as America, is to rekindle that particular spirit, and not in this like fuddy kind of way, right? Of like, man, I really love shooting guns. I love my guns. I love my $5,000 gun that has $1,000 optic on it. Look at me shoot my guns. It's rather like, no, we as a people, right, can fight, right? We can defend our families, we can defend our neighborhoods. And like that's the that it's that gives you freedom.
Yeah, and
And
the
when you're
particular
divorced from that, it's gone.
Yeah,
you know?
the particular thing that we screw up with so much, particularly on the right, is seeing it as an individual freedom, where it's
Yes.
just an
Yeah.
individual right to own guns, and that is where it stems from. You have
Yeah.
that, but the whole purpose again was to be able to have militias. And the thing about militias, and this is where like a lot of the
Oh,
right and a lot of the militia movements failed miserably at, is that they set themselves forward. It's like, you know what, we're going to have these militias again. Also, the only purpose of the militia is to overthrow a tyrannical government. Right now, the government is tyrannical. And so it's like, no,
yeah.
duh, you got infiltrated by the FBI and the
Yeah,
ATF and all
exactly.
of these groups when you literally put up a big public banner saying, we're going to form an organization that's going to overthrow you. Of course, it reacts that way. You have
Yeah.
to
What
understand
else would
that,
they do?
yeah,
Yeah.
because like the way that militias functioned was as a part of the community and as a part of
Yeah.
the local government, as something that could be called upon and relied upon, that were trusted and had value to them. And so if you wanted to, and this is one of the things that I'm working on and trying to help push, and there's some people that do some good work with this. I don't know if I should necessarily name them, but if you look at the best way that you could possibly recreate that, I would say that the best bet is through volunteer search and rescue teams and disaster
Oh, yeah.
relief organizations.
Yeah.
As if you can build these community groups that are centered around that, and centered around, or even like kind of a community watch, like we're going to like look at your houses when you're gone. Like if you
Yeah.
start to form that, that is the basis by which you can then have something, and it needs to have some kind of public tie-in and some kind of public good to it, that is not
Yo, absolutely.
simply
Yeah. Yeah.
breaking crates of glass for a tyrannical government. Like there
Yeah.
has to be
I
more
think,
to it.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, this is the thing. When I lived in my hometown, right, I had a lot of, I mean, I had, many friends who were sheriff's deputies. I had a lot of contact with our sheriff. And, these are sort of ideas, sitting around having some beers with these guys that I would propose. Right. And so like I was in my hometown in 2020 when, I mean, I remember sitting, having a beer with, one of the top deputies, in the sheriff's department, and we're like watching on our phones, like battalion level, infantry just without rifles, moving in a coordinated way in the Twin Cities, like 90 minutes from us. And we're all looking at each other like, okay, well, what do we do if they came here and they had guns? Right. And it's like, yeah, we would have to deputize like 1,000 guys and just like man the barricades, and so from that point on, I just started thinking like, well, we can't like do that tonight. We can't like organize that tonight, man. So what do we do when, between now and when something like this happens again, or when something like this would actually occur? And it's like, well, you need like civil defense. Like you need the kinds of things that existed during, World War II. Like it has to index with, the official legitimate government. And so it's like, no, you should just have like disaster relief organizations in your county. Like that is a thing you should do. And have men that are willing to volunteer their time and their effort and take time off of work to pursue these things together. Right. That's what a feared would look like, today. It wouldn't look like a bunch of random guys, who read all sorts of literature they read, off the dark web, and gathering together
Maybe a
out in the
few
woods to shoot
diaries
guns.
or other things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Somebody's diary, right? Going out in the woods and shooting guns together. All right, because it's like, all right, like the best case scenario is you're gonna end up in jail, man. Like no, you're not overthrowing the government, right? Your whole goal is to preserve your community and to protect it and to like bless your neighbors. And so that comes with just like serving them. Right. I mean, you saw this to a large extent a couple of years ago when the hurricane hit in the South here. Like you had people that would just be like, Yeah, I'm going to East Tennessee, Western North Carolina, and I'm just taking my chainsaw in my truck and a couple cases of water, and I'm gonna go help people. And it's like, what if you had that, but like in an organized way, where like your county, sent 100 guys to go do stuff uh like that when those things occur. Like that's what a feud would look like. It wouldn't look like something that it's like a bunch of wacko crazy guys that want to overthrow the government that are going to end up in the federal penitentiary. It'll look like people that actually love their neighbors and care about them and want to bless them.
Yeah,
um
no,
and and so
you're hitting something exactly here with it, which is like a lot of my time is spent trying to explain this to people that there is no way to act, like a lot of people will say like there's no political solution. That's a common term that gets thrown around.
all the
I
time.
would
Yeah,
I would say there are only political solutions because
that's right.
any solution that has ever happened basically in human history to a faulty internal government has come from within the pre-existing system.
Yeah.
That is the pattern that you will find always repeated. And it's where like a lot of people get really upset about how Luther talked about the peasant rebellions and the peasant revolts, but Luther was kind of hitting on something there that was correct,
Yeah.
which is that this kind of idea of like just we're gonna just revolt and we're all gonna like at one day all the people are gonna rise up. That's a pretty like Marxist, like leftist idea of things that
Yeah.
even Marxists and leftists never did successfully once. The closest you
Well,
even
and
get
like, and Marx, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe like Marx wrote positively about the Anabaptists and the peasant revolts in the Reformation period, right? That like these were good. This is an example of what the proletariat can do. Um, and it's exactly right. That's what it was. Like populism was just random people rising up. That doesn't work. Like you need elites that are aligned with you, and you also need the structure of legitimate government um that is aligned with you as well. Like you need that organization. You need people that want to uphold order. You don't want just like random mobs of people that devolve into killing everybody and like settling petty scores. And so like this is something like I was actually like the other day I was talking to some guys at the gym about the Boy Scouts, and we all grew up, I was in the Scouts when I was a kid and they all were too. And we were all kind of bemoaning like what happened to the Boy Scouts recently. And it's like, whoa, this is not like, it wasn't random. I mean, one, like they were pushing for like queer scoutmasters in the Boy Scouts when I was in there. People were suing for it, the ACLU and all that kind of stuff. And like it was targeted for destruction purposely for decades. And there's a reason why it was, because that is an organization that takes this very same shape where you're doing it with young boys, but but they they're operating like at a community level. They care about their community. They're doing projects for their community. They're learning to survive out in the wild. They're learning all these useful skills, and of course, like from the very beginning, it was kind of sort of training for young men to serve in the military, but also serve their local community in a similar capacity as well. And it's like, golly, why people that hate our country and hate everything that I love, why would they target that particular organization to be destroyed? Right? Why would they do that? Well, it's obvious why they would do that. Like that was a model for very good things. And it's like we need to resurrect something like that. All right. I've told people that like, all right, if I got like, half an hour with Elon Musk and a bunch of other billionaires that are aligned with him, um, like one of the top three things I would tell him to like devote his energy and resources, if like this dude like really actually does care about America and Western civilization and so forth, it would be like, all right, you need to refound the Boy Scouts of America, use the original handbook from like, 1912 or whatever, and build an organization like that for young boys. And it'll be attacked with civil rights laws and everything like that. And that's why you have all your billions of dollars to be able to fight those attacks. But the value of something like that would be massive. And to have a corollary for adults as well, where you have, like during World War II, all throughout America, you had like massive civil defense leagues. And you also had like these Great Depression, programs, these New Deal programs that in my libertarian days, I like obviously hated, like the Civilian Conservation Corps and things like that. But it's like, actually, that was a brilliant program. And it's something that all my libertarian buddies, all my like very conservative buddies will like hate me for saying, but it's like, if Trump like just signed an executive order today, it's like, we're gonna have a Civilian Conservation Corps, and we're gonna take all of these like disaffected young men that are out there that are unemployed, that are shut up because of H-1Bs and everything else, and we're gonna pay them like a really good wage, like $100K a year, and they're just gonna build stuff for all year long. They're gonna build stuff. They're gonna build roads. They're gonna build highways. They're gonna build bridges. Whatever. That would be very, very, very good. To have things like that. And so because you need to bring back these particular things, right? You need to bring back the fjord. You need to revive that within the Anglo-Saxon consciousness, right? So do you think I'm crazy there?
Not
spoke for
not at
like 10
all.
minutes, but
You're hitting on something that's very useful here, because the biggest issue that you have, particularly like with like right-wing thinkers and a lot of people like in our side of things, or what we touch into, is that a lot of them are they've read a lot and they understand a lot, and there's a lot of extremely intelligent people that are on the right that will talk endlessly about their preferred ideological or political system, or like, we have to have this is how it has to be, we need to have this particular type of monarchy where it's structured like this, and this, and that's the solution. Okay, well, how would you even come close to approaching that? Right? Like you need to actually have like a degree of pragmatism and thinking about, okay, so how do you get there? And in particular with the military, one of the things that we had when I was in was backwards planning. So what I mean by backwards planning is, you start with what your end state is. Okay, so I want to see America where people look more like me, worship more like me, have the same values as me. That's what I want. Yeah. How do I get to that? Okay, well, let's start backwards here and get to what is the very first thing that you need to do in order to get that. And that is things like, I did just DM you something. I don't know if you could bring it up on screen.
I got it. Yeah, let me pull it up. Yeah.
But this is one of my absolute favorite quotes. Sam Adams gets overshadowed heavily by his cousin, John Adams. But Sam Adams is, again, one of my favorites there ever was.
Yeah, let me read it. Yeah, let me read it for the audio, because people are going to listen to this on audio.
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
And that's why I try to sound really good. So, let divines and philosophers, statesmen and patriots unite their endeavors to renovate the age by impressing the minds of men with the importance of educating their little boys and girls, and inculcating in the minds of youth the fear and love of the deity and universal philanthropy, and in subordination to these great principles, the love of their country, of instructing them in the art of self-government, without which they never can act a wise part in the government of societies, great or small. In short, of leading them in the study and practice of the exalted virtues of the Christian system. All right, that's great.
No, I love it. It's one of my absolute favorites. And Sam Adams, besides the fact that he spent the early part of the build up to the Revolutionary War as an anon with like 30 different pseudonyms writing in the papers under all of these different things. And then Lexington and Concord mostly happened because he got doxxed by the British and then they tried to arrest him for it. But people overlook him, but he was like by far one of the most pious Christians that was there. He wrote even about like America being a Christian Sparta as like his view of it. But what this one I love because it's a back and forth. It comes from a back and forth between him and John Adams, and they're writing letters to each other. And John Adams is much more about we need to build the right scaffolding, the right system to do this. And Sam Adams is much more focused on how do we get people to be better, to be able to uphold a system? How do we keep a system going? And when he says divines, divines was an old term like school of divinity. It just means
Yeah.
pastors. So he's saying pastors,
Yeah.
philosophers, politicians, and patriots should be united in this endeavor to work through this. And focusing on children in particular, like that next generation and building upon them, that is where I think the best that you can do is to work on your like if you're even just a father, if that's all you have is your household that you have dominion over,
Yeah.
it's working through your child to get them to be as best as they can. It's
Yeah.
working and certainly like we understand that we need it's not just that. You do need to change the political system. The political system matters, the culture matters, all these things. But how do you actually get to the point where you can change these? You do have to start at the lowest levels first. And things like the Boy Scouts are ones that can actually do that and drive these changes. And I think that having that would be something that would help us tremendously. Um,
Yeah.
and if it's not the Boy Scouts, if it's not, this $1 billion thing that's national level, starting something or finding any analog to that, even if it's just you and your dads getting together and being like, man, we need to like get our sons to be more solid with these things.
Yeah.
Having learn like just a little bit of like woodland survival or these things, it does give you a level of self-governance and it teaches you things about like how things work that then
Yeah.
translate far better to where I think the best example is like the first time that I went hunting. I was a young teenager, and it was just like a rabbit hunt. But the very act of going out there, going through the woods, walking through it, having a gun, shooting a rabbit, skinning the rabbit, getting the meat, making all of that, that made me understand intimately the process by which we get our food, by the process by
Yeah.
which these things happen, of life itself, of this circle of like what is necessary to sustain yourself on a practical, pragmatic level that no amount of literature, book reading, or education can really give you.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. And so I think about this stuff like, so much of it is like we look at, I mean, this goes back to like conversation about Iran and things like that. And it's like, look, um, I have a modestly big account on X.com. And I've given my opinion about the Iran war, and I know that there are people like in the administration that read the stuff I say. But I don't really have any effect on it. I look at it like, man, Tucker Carlson went to the White House like 3 times in the lead up to the Iran war and was telling President Trump, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And he did, obviously didn't listen to him. And so if, he has the ear of the president of the United States, like me and my teeny tiny little Twitter account, it means nothing. But what I can do is this kind of stuff. Like I can, focus on training my sons and my daughters, well, to be, to not just be, um, the very best that they can be and maximize their potential, but also, um, to care about their neighbors, to bless them, to recognize that they're not merely individuals, but they're part of a whole, that they're part of, a larger community and society, um, and to progress toward, what is good and true and right, I can do those things, right? I can do things in real life that are far more meaningful, in the long term. Because I think that's one thing that everyone is, thankfully, or not everyone, but everyone kind of in our, you know, sphere of the internet and everywhere else is much more keyed into is like the long term. Like, well, where do we go from here? Like Donald Trump is an old man. He's not going to be president in two, 2.5 years. Um and like, where do we go from here? Like, what happens after this? What do we do? And and I think it's right, integrating yourself into your community as much as you can, uh, wielding the influence you have to do good things, positive things, where you can, to gain experience in running things successfully, in building things successfully. Like those are the things that are gonna matter, 20 years from now. It's not going to like what your opinion of the Iran war right now, even if you have the dumbest opinion, and there are a lot of really dumb opinions about it, right? Even if you have the dumbest opinion about it now, uh, what matters more is like the stuff that you're doing that will have an impact on many other people, 20 years from now. And so, like, I look back, 20 years ago, I was, you know, 19 years old, and I thought like, yeah, well, of course the Iraq war is good. Like President Bush said, they're terrorists, and so like we had to do it, right? I had the dumbest opinions about that, and yet, I feel like I've I've done okay since then, right? I've recognized, yeah, I had a dumb opinion about it, and I've moved on to better things and to producing positive changes, in the world around me. And so, yeah, and it's the easiest thing in the world because we have access to so much information. We can talk to people in Japan about food, right now, right? But but actually, like the things right in front of us matter so much more. And and building up, what you can, locally really matters. And like I hate the stupid lib bumper sticker, think globally, act locally. But it I don't want to hand it to them, man, but like they understand something about the world with that stupid bumper sticker, that we often don't. That that stuff actually matters. Like if you're in a, you know even small city, um your small city probably has a gay pride parade in it, and like an LGBTQ WXYZ, clubs and movement and everything else. Like that happened because like actual human beings that care about that degeneracy, um like did stuff and organized and made it happen, right? It didn't just like George Soros didn't just say like Muncie, Indiana is going to have a gay pride parade now, right? Like actual human beings made that happen. Um and so, right, the alternative, right, the opposite is also true, that like you can do things in the place that you are at that will benefit your people. Like, and it goes back to, it's something like when CJ and I were doing the live streams, we actually we had an ad that we ran for a while, for backwards planning financial, and Joe Garrissey is, military guy. And so this is where it comes from, right? Is like, well, if you're going to plan your financial future, you got to think about where you want to be and where you are right now. And you think about where we are right now, and there are so many people right around you, everywhere that you are that are just, sheep without shepherds, right? They're not reading, weird political theory on the internet, right? They're not. But they know that things are messed up. They know that things are bad, and you can get together with them and do things with them, right? You just have to not be like weird and antisocial. Like you have to like just do stuff with normal people, and you can actually build things. You can do really good stuff.
Yeah, and that whole think locally, act locally, that's not where I think it should end at per se. If that's
No,
all you
no, of
have,
course, yeah,
then that's there. But I have tremendous amounts of hope for just how much we have been able to accomplish in North Carolina, just and what I've been able to see out of the Nathaniel Green Society, what I've been
yeah,
able to see out of the Carolina Men's Forum, which you spoke at.
yeah,
Just what we've been able to put on when you just get people together into a room of various standing statures who have some degree
yeah,
of independence, who are capable of self-governance, who are, overall solid and have some degree
yeah,
of talents that God has given them, and pulling those together. And when you can simply just talk and figure things out, that is how you actually can reorient things and change things. You're never going to really accomplish anything just purely on your own.
yeah,
But when you can get just together in a room, eat a bit of barbecue, and really just talk about these things, work through these things, listen to a couple speeches, find out that you're on the same page more or less.
yeah,
And then,
and collaborate with other
yeah,
people. That was the thing. Yeah, I was invited to it, and I thought like, maybe it'll be like 20 guys. It'll be a fun time hanging out with some guys, and yeah, and shooting the breeze and hanging out. And it was like there were way over 100 people
yeah,
there.
no, it was
It was like,
well over 100. We had
yeah,
some local politicians, some guys that were running for
yeah,
office. We had um, a lot of people that were like in pretty decent standing. It was not just a bunch of
mhm,
yahoos, and it was not just it was not just a fan club get together. Oh, do you really like a case for Christian nationalism? Do you really like the monarchist option? Come get your book signed. Like that was
yeah,
not at all what it was. It is a
yeah. I
group
didn't
of
sign a
people.
single book there. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. No, it was great. Like I was very, very, very impressed with the men that were there, and it was like, yeah, I mean, I love the Yahoos too, right? But they were there were I like witnessed, the conversations that happened, and that's the value of things like that, where there are guys that have, varying degrees of, ability to get stuff done that, there's only so much you can do on your own. But then, all right, oh, there's another guy here and another guy here and another guy here. And it's like, oh, you're in this, industry. Why? That's similar to mine. Like, this guy, and you begin, building these networks um where you can actually accomplish things, not only in business, but also that benefit your community in significant ways. And so like that's the kind of stuff that has to be done now. I think like, Trump winning um really means he's given us a respite. Like so many people are like, oh, I hate Donald Trump. He's owned by Benjamin Netanyahu, and everything's terrible. And it's like, yeah, okay, there's some criticisms to be had for sure. Um, but like, do you know how bad it would be right now
If
if that
Merrick Garland was the AG of the DOJ and was in charge of these things, like anyone who's
dude,
actually trying to do stuff would be,
I'd be in jail right now,
yeah,
right? I've committed zero crimes, but I would be facing prosecution for something.
yeah. Or
And
they'd even just find ways to have an NGO sue you for this, that, and the other. They would
yeah,
probably use the IRS. Like pretty much every like organization that would be trying to do something would be under a microscope. I mean, if you even understood politics back in like the Obama days,
oh yeah, with
Obama
the
was
Tea
doing
Party.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
it would just be turned up to 11. Like this is very clearly
Yeah.
what they want to do. They know what they're doing. And the best way that you can view this and how I view these things is I strip all of the emotional weight out of all of these different things, or like the politicians' promises or all these other things. I could care less about any of that. The only thing that I really care about is what am I trying to do in my station to work things? Well,
Yeah.
I'm a part of the
Yeah.
Nathaniel Green Society. I'm working through these things in North Carolina. Who
Yeah.
would give me the best operational environment where I can do what I'm doing and try to make something better? I'm not
Yeah.
expecting anyone to be my savior, to be like, besides Christ. I'm not expecting like the great man to just show up and just he just does everything for me, and which is what a lot of
Yeah.
people seem to want, is just like I do literally nothing and someone just shows up and does everything for
Yeah.
me. No,
Yeah.
you kind of have to do something about this and work as much as you can in the station that you have in order to make something happen. And so it
Yeah.
really is
Yeah.
just who, and this is going to be really important in 2028.
Yeah.
What option is going to give me the best environment where I can continue to do what I am doing, and who will have the best one for trying to make something move forward. That is all you really have to look at. I don't think you're going to get like the person who
Obviously,
fixed.
it's Gavin Newsom, Kaiser. Like,
Yeah, I mean his yeah, it's so great that he has like not an Indian wife, even though his wife is literally talking about how she like makes her children play with her boys play with dolls and changes
Yeah,
the
that's right.
protagonists and stories to women. Like
Yeah.
yeah, so
He's an insane person. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely deranged and evil people. And
Yeah.
I
Give
don't
me
want.
Usha Vance 1,000 times out of 1,000 before that woman, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I think like if you I have not heard anyone give a good argument as to like why he would not be the best for that regard. And that it always comes down to these like emotional principled arguments, bringing up Thiel or some of the other things. And I
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
care. I just
No.
care about who is going to make the best environment for me to continue to do what I am doing.
Yeah. Oh,
Be-
exactly. That was my perspective with Trump, man.
Yeah,
Is
it's the
like,
same with me and Trump too. It's like I don't
yeah.
think he's just making things in a better light for where I can do what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any illusions, and I remember. I mean, people can go back, and that's the thing about a podcast is they can like go check what did you say, and after Trump won, I was like, okay, like this is really good. I'm really happy that he won, um, but like we have to temper our expectations, right? Like he's not going to be able to deport 100 million people. I would love it if he did, but it's like the structure of things is such, judicially, politically, economically, so forth. Those things are going. It's a tall order, right? It's going to be tough to do that, and so like just closing the border, just making it like marginally harder to get an H-1B, just like investigating Somali fraud, like all these things that are like really low hanging fruit, obviously. But he's like doing that stuff. And I am pleased as punch, right? That's happening. Obviously, because I mean, not only just like the alternative if Kamala won, but like if you had Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, GOP, if Donald Trump just decided like I'm gonna go golf until I die, I don't really care about what's going on. Um, that would be way worse, obviously, right? Like people have no conception of that.
Yeah.
That if the most right wing politician we had in Washington was Ted Cruz, um, we would be in such worse shape than we are right now. And that's the way that it was in 2015. Like
Yeah.
he was the right wing standard bearer. And we've progressed so much beyond that. And also like you have many congressmen, you have several senators that are really good actually. And we're going to continue to have more. Right? That's the
Yeah,
other thing.
no, and that's what you need to hit on is there's sort of a double-edged sword here, which is that very soon a lot of the older generations are going to be gone. Now, the positive is that this is who's largely backing the neocon, the establishment, and the younger generations
Mhm.
tend to be better on a lot of these things. The other
Yeah.
half is that that is the most reliable voting bloc right now that exists
Yeah, it
to
is.
keep things going. So the literal only way to like avoid this situation is to alter the demographics as much as possible, which we are actually seeing tangible benefits in altering the
Yeah.
demographics. Like the birth rate is up for the population that more or less supports this more. You do have a solid class that's coming in, especially on through this admin. A lot of the guys who got into it are solid, and I know a lot of people that are working at the lower levels, but they take time in order to then mature and get into a place where now they actually get to do more and actually do stuff. And it's
Yeah.
literally
You could
just
have I'm sorry, Kaiser. Like in a little over 6 months time, you could have Ken Paxton and Paul Dans in the United States Senate instead of John Cornyn and Lindsey Graham,
yeah.
right? Like that's a realistic future. And like that's the thing. Like everyone's like, oh, Congress is terrible. We should just get rid of Congress, like as if that's gonna happen. Um, and it's like the lag time politically with the House of Representatives and with the Senate is substantial. And so like what do you have now for the Republicans? You have Obama era politicians, right? Who their only thing that they can do is obstruct, right? Their only thing they can do is oppose Obama or the surrogate of Obama, Biden or Kamala or whomever. They can't do anything aggressive. They can't do anything offensive. Um, and that only came in with Trump in 2016. But it takes like 15 years to have the kind of turnover that you need to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
And
sometimes even longer. I mean,
yeah,
the stuff with when you look at like the left, right? Like and especially like when you look at like the Democrat Party, and this is what I try to bring up because there's a lot of people who will also say, "Oh, there's no way to change the GOP. There's no way to do anything about it." And then they'll say things like you just have to destroy it. And then it's also like, I guess you never heard of Ross Perot because he had if anyone
yeah,
was going to destroy the GOP, it would have been him in the Reform Party when
yeah,
he actually ran for presidency, actually pulled a significant amount of the electorate towards his new party. And then what happened? The Reform Party dies away. Republican Party is still standing. You
yeah,
deciding that I'm going to withhold my vote, I'm going to vote for the Democrats is somehow going to destroy the GOP or remove the Republican Party from
yeah.
existence because like you and
Okay.
your podcast
Yeah.
audience are all like, we're just not voting, we're not participating. And then somehow they'll
No.
either like shrivel up and die or go, oh no, we need to actually like change. Well, the other thing that people don't understand who are saying this and who push this line of thinking is that the Republican Party is very skittish and very cowardly on a lot of these things. And so if the Republican Party lost, even if you like somehow pulled off this plan magically and like there was just an absolute blowout in 2026 and 2028, what the strategists and the people that are there right now would be being told would be we need to moderate really heavily. We went too far right. We were way too extreme. What we need to do is we need to court the Hispanic vote, the black vote, the gay vote. We need to like moderate on all this. We need to get women more involved. We scared away women. We need to like remove all of these dangerous, scary far right elements out of everything. We need to purge them completely, and that's how we're going to win. And that's also like what would be being told to them, and that's what a lot of people would go along with because when you lose very badly, never is your answer to, oh, we just had to go like even more hard, even more extreme. Like that's just not how people think or operate. And so it's very
Yeah.
funny to hear that and that people throw that forward. And like the only actual way to really change things is to be the one who actually makes things change. You have
Yeah.
to have some level of participation, some level of buy-in. And the other thing about this and why there's this benefit right now is because there's not one crown in the gutter that's available, but if you want to do stuff, there are like a million tiny crowns all throughout the country in all of these local GOPs and all of these establishments and all of these places that have just positions open and ready to be filled across counties.
Yeah.
There's so many places that are just like, if you just show up and you're a relatively normal, respectable guy who just is clean cut and shows up and says some basic like, oh yeah, I really like the Constitution, I like the founding fathers, I like America, I'm a patriot, I like Donald Trump. They will be like, how would you like to be the treasurer? How would you like to be the secretary of the local GOP? How would you like this position? And they
Yeah,
will
and it's
just,
just like boring stuff, but like
yeah,
you can do it.
it's
Yeah.
really boring, and you have to learn Robert's rules, and you have to do a lot of these things. And it's not like sexy at all, where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna overthrow things, like is what you're
And
never
yeah,
also never going to.
you can't go in there and be like, oh, well, I was radicalized on the internet and I don't believe in the 19th Amendment. And then all the boomer ladies in the, local GOP will be like, get this freak out of here. Like you have to be able to like be, fairly normal
Yeah,
and be able to operate in the environment that actually exists, not the one that you wish, you know, on the internet existed. And but like you can do it. Like every single precinct needs like judges, or ballot monitors or whatever they call them wherever you are. Like they need those people. And it's a thankless job. It's not like you're not going to, be lauded by anyone. But it's valuable, and people will see that like, oh, you're putting the effort in, you are devoting your time and your energy to this, and they'll give you more stuff to do. They'll like and like that's how you build things. Then you can bring your buddies in and you can work hard.
yeah.
You know,
It,
um
it's so
doing thankless things like handing out literature and door knocking and calling people on the phone. Like there's stuff that can be done. And like in state legislative elections and congressional elections, like you can actually have some really, really, really good people um that can get in there, and all of them are starved for volunteers, right? And you can prove yourself valuable in these ways, right? Like that's the thing. It's like I remember when I was like 22 years old, I didn't have, two nickels to rub together. I didn't have any money. I didn't, have any like discernible skills or anything like that. And it's like, well, I just volunteered for the county GOP and helped out, and gave my time to those things because I believed in it. I thought it was good. Um and and you begin to, build a network with people. You begin to like people know that you're like actually a decent guy, and they give you more things to do. You get more responsibility as you get older. And so I always like tell guys like, hey, you've got all in the world. Like you could devote another, 500 hours to Crusader Kings if you want. Or you could do this.
Now, Crusader Kings is not the worst use of your time, I will say. Paradox games can teach
Right.
you a lot of history, but yes,
Very true. Yeah.
but you're completely correct on that. Where it's like if you do want to actually see things change, like there is an ability to do so. And but like I say all of this, like it really is like banging my head against a wall trying to get this message through to some people, because a lot of them will just say it's impossible. But
Yeah.
I've literally seen how easy it is. And if you really frame it, the fight that we have right now is easier than any one that our forefathers have ever had to deal with ever. Because, if you look at like the revolution, like that was an actual shooting war. People were dying. People
That's
had
right.
to, like, your neighbors might have been Tories and they might have gone and burned your farm to the ground. Like that is what
Mhm.
was going on at that time. And they fought against the largest government in the world that had one of the greatest military structures that there ever was, and they won. And they did all of that like at great personal cost, great expense. And what you have right now facing you in terms of is a corrupted, degenerated political system. And the way that you have to fix that, and the only way that you actually really can fix that, is by working within it to change it. And I will put this forward, like, no, the other thing that people think is that like a system will just collapse. Like if it just gets like bad enough, it'll just go away. And one of the things that they'll often
Yeah.
bring up is the Soviet Union. And it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
ones too, because like
Yeah.
there has never been a system that did not just happened more like less than what the Soviet Union's collapse was like. Because
Yeah.
they know literally nothing about the history of it, because the way that the Soviet
Yeah.
Union collapsed was Gorbachev was doing a bunch of reforms. There was a coup that happened where a bunch of the military leaders captured Gorbachev, tried to reinstall and undo everything that he had. They tried to get Boris Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin was not captured. Boris Yeltsin then rallies like the nation on camera on all of these videos. He's giving speeches from atop a tank about like how we need to like restore these things and build these things up. And he rallies like all of these people that now are looking to him. And he managed to like bloodlessly diffuse the communist coup. At the same time, Boris Yeltsin now is like highly elevated among the entire population. He has all this capital that he just built up by diffusing this coup. And Gorbachev looks extremely weak. And so what Boris Yeltsin immediately did after he had this was he went to all of the different presidents of the Soviets. He got with them and then he said, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to force an end to this system. And we're going to present that to Gorbachev and get him there, because now he's weak, powerless, is in this position. I have all of this capital. Let's get together and do this. He made that happen. Soviet Union collapsed. Presidents, now you have just the Russian Republic. That's how it happened. It was not just a system just collapsed because it was inevitably going to collapse. And the United States will not do that ever. It is not just going to one day, all of a sudden, like if the Democrats just really screw things up or things get really bad, it'll just go away. No, it'll keep persisting and keep going until someone makes it happen. Like it's to tie it back into yours. It's like the idea that the Odin tree would just fall over eventually, just because people would eventually realize that this doesn't work. No, you actually have to pick up an axe and go cut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that is by far like the thing I try to communicate to people is checking out is not an option. Hoping for accelerationism and things to get bad enough so that the sheep will wake up. That doesn't happen. That will never happen. People will go about their lives the best they can and continue to just survive, no matter how bad it gets. And so to produce any significant positive change to anything, like you actually have to do stuff. You have to be involved. You have to be building things. You have to be working extremely hard. And we don't get that. We think that we want these fantasies where, oh well, things are just going to collapse, and then my boutique ideology will
Rise from the
somehow,
ashes.
yeah, like we'll have anarcho-capitalism, or we'll have like this right-wing panacea. And that is not what happens in societies. It is a long, slow burn, and it's not inevitable that things just have to always get bad. You can have restorations of there's so many examples in history of a society that's teetering on the edge, and then there is this restoration of it.
If we could
And
tie back in
yeah.
to our topic, and maybe this is where we could wrap it at. I mean, think about being like Alfred,
Mhm.
where it's every single Saxon kingdom has been demolished. They have all been destroyed by the Vikings. Your own kingdom has been
You're
ravaged. You're
you're
at
King
like
Alfred, and you're in the marshes, and you're burning the cakes on the oven. And you're in hiding, and Wessex has all but fallen, and that's where you're at,
yeah,
right?
and he rallies the men together, takes them to the field,
Yeah.
defeats them right then and there, gets I believe is Gutrid to convert to
Yeah.
to Christianity on the
Yeah.
spot, and establishes the Danelaw and now builds England from there. Like there's been many like
Yeah.
that, and that is a far worse position than what America
Oh yeah.
is in right now. Like a
Way worse.
million times worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think like blackpilling is like real blackpilling, not just like, oh, like people that are like, I'm not optimistic about this or that or anything. Like I give CJ a hard time all the time for being blackpilled, but I don't think he actually is. Because he wouldn't be doing the things that he is if he really was. And so I don't know if he's listening. Sometimes he is. But but blackpilling though is like a contagion, right? It's this if someone's totally demoralized and they think all is lost, like that spreads to other people, and they feel the same way and they just want to give up. And we have to resist that. We have to resist the idea that all is lost. I'm just going to go into live out in the woods in a cabin and hide away while everything bad happens, and somehow we'll survive. Like that's not a plan. Like they will come for you.
Ask Randy
It is
Weaver
over.
how well showing just hiding away in a cabin worked.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly. And it's like, no, you actually have to do stuff. Like there are so many people that I love that are very near and dear to me that are just like completely checked out on everything. And they're, in some ways, like they're like, Trump's a pedophile and the Epstein files and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, well, what are your options and what like do you have as a goal for the future? Right? Do you think that we can recover anything, or do you think that everything's just going to get bad and you're just delaying the inevitable defeat? And I'm like, we can't do that, and it's gonna, you're going to have to you're gonna have to like hold your nose and support people that like you don't really like all that much. You might have to you do a lot of work for people that you don't really trust really at all. Um, but in doing so, you can build things that you can trust. You can build things that are good. You can build up your people to do uh, things that you never thought possible. And and that's the state of where things are at, I think, right now. Where things are actually in some ways they're like way more precarious than anyone realizes. And in other ways, um, there is so much that is solid, that is sturdy, that is that can weather any storm all around us, that you shouldn't be black-pilled at all, right? Like there are going to be bad things that happen, and we are in the middle of a bad thing that has been going on for a few decades now. Uh, but this isn't the end of the story.
yeah,
Like
and
you personally can do things to make things better.
and even beyond that, I think, like, my view of things is that America is a providential people that have been given this land by God for us and for our posterity. I think we have
Yeah,
done a lot to run away from that, remove that. But if you
yeah,
have trust ultimately in God as, in
yeah,
his plan and as the author of all these things, working through that, I think that can give you a degree of certainty and hope that very little else can, and that's where I
yeah,
come down to on it.
yeah.
But
Same.
if
Yeah,
yeah, if you wanted to close it out, I know you have to go pretty soon.
yeah.
But I appreciate you having me on. If you could,
Oh man,
yeah. No, I think it was
absolutely. Like, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
no, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just gonna, if I could shill my various things.
Shill away, my friend.
Okay, yeah, you could follow me on X if you liked anything that I had to say here. Repeat a lot of this in various threads and posts, Substack articles on occasion. You can find me at Kaiser Lohengramm on Twitter. Um, I'm a host of the Green Tavern on YouTube. And you can also find my Substack, all this on the link tree on my profile on X.
Oh, awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on and, just I don't know, like so much of this stuff is like at a meta level. Um like so many people are very demoralized, discouraged, because so much is like totally out of our hands. But I think, this and even just like talking about our history and where we came from, should encourage people to continue plugging away,
Yeah.
continue doing what is good, that we absolutely can win, and it is not over. That
And if I could,
it's
just to
never
give
over.
like one last thing, the solution that I've come to and why I am never black pilled, why I'm always optimistic is not only just my view on things, but the fact that I get to meet in proximity with patriots on a very regular basis, solid men who are both love this country, love their God, and we are able to just talk about these things. We are able to have a fraternal brotherhood out of this. Like that is what will keep me more than anything else ever will. It's just like once every 2 weeks or so, just getting together
Yeah.
around a fire, smoking cigars, having a few beers, and then just discussing these things and working and planning on this stuff. Seeing that and having that environment will keep you out of it. And I think that a lot of people who are really demoralized and depressed have no network whatsoever, and that's what leads
Yeah.
them to that. So if you're in North
Yeah.
Carolina, you ought to join the Nathaniel Green Society. And
Absolutely.
if I could also, like the wider network that I'm in, the Old Glory Club is available. Chapters are all different. The Nathaniel Green Society is by far the best, but if you're unfortunate enough not to be in North Carolina, you can find chapters all throughout the country that are also doing very similar work and are very
Yeah.
solid organizations.
Yeah, the Tennessee one, there's more than one. The Tennessee ones are very good, really great guys, and like there are things you can do. There are always things you can do, and more than anything else, like what you said, having other guys is such a blessing. Because we're so atomized, we're so isolated, and it's so easy. It's the whole system is devised this way to make you feel like you are alone. Yet you are the only one that sees things the way that you do, and the whole world is just going to hell. It's all burning down. But finding other men that care about the same things you do, that love our country, that love the Lord Jesus Christ, uh, it will be a balm for your soul if you do that. And so I would encourage everyone to find their people, find their guys, and see them in real life, in person, as much as you possibly can. But Yeah, I think that about wraps it up here. I hope everyone has a wonderful and blessed Good Friday, and a wonderful celebration of the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Um, it is, I mean, you want to talk about right? You want to talk about a situation that like it looks like it is so over, that we're never coming back from this. This is terrible. Like all is lost. And then God rises from the dead and we are so back. And so I want you to, go to your Easter services on Sunday and be as white pilled as you possibly can be. Because that's what the resurrection means, is we will win, and we already have won. So have a wonderful weekend. Stay peacefully dangerous, and we will see you next time.